Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Web3 Word. I'm very excited to be here today with Jason Metz, who's a Web3 strategist within Time Magazine, who's got some great info, great insight into not only, I guess, what we know as Web3, but how it works with big institutions as well. But I'm sure that you're going to be able to introduce yourself better than me, Jason. So talk to me a bit about what it is that you've been doing previously, your career leading up to this, and then now what you're doing.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting me on, Ollie. I really enjoy watching your program, and it's always interesting to break bread with those that you respect and admire. And I'm a fan of yours, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, for the last year, I've been the Senior Web3 Strategist at Time. As many people may or may not know, Time was really one of the first mainstream legacy brands, especially in the media space, to embrace Web3 in a really big way. We built out Timepieces, which is our B2C platform. It's where we have partnered with hundreds of the biggest artists and creators in this space, launched almost a dozen different projects, mostly around art and photography and creativity. And then, really over the last, I would say, 6 to 9 months, we've focused on kind of the editorial side of Web3. One of the interesting things about a brand like Time, having been around for 100 years, we're very much the arbiter of truth in the world. People come to Time to understand what's happening in the world around them, and certainly in a space as complex and mysterious and often misunderstood as Web3. It's a really important role to play to try to help people understand what this is, why it matters, how it affects them. So it's been really great to kind of play a role in that. And I guess to the other part of your question, before I joined Time, before I went down the Web3 rabbit hole, really over the last 3 years, I was on the agency side. I was within the Publicis ecosystem, Omnicom. I ran an influencer marketing agency for about 5.5 years, sandwiched in between, about 17 plus years overall on the agency side, leading business development and growth and client strategy, working with some of the biggest brands in the world like Porsche and Procter and Gamble and Adidas and IBM and Unilever and Johnson & Johnson and Bacardi. Lots of great, amazing brands. And my role was essentially always helping them connect more meaningfully with their audiences, and that kind of brings it all full circle. That's why I fell in love with the promise of Web3 and blockchain and AI and AR and VR and all these amazing technologies. I think ultimately, among many other things, these are technologies that will transform the relationship between and among people and the brand's IP that they love the most. So that's what kind of drew me to this space. And that's what I've really enjoyed doing over the last roughly 3 years since I dove in at first.
Great. No, thanks for that. And I think you're right. It's all well and good getting info from new media sources, new websites and blogs and this sort of stuff about Web3. But when you see it from someone like Time Magazine and really help, I guess, demystify what it is to clients and to all generations, not just necessarily people who are used to the online formats, who are used to finding blogs and stuff, but people who are used to print magazine and all of these sorts of different areas where it's actually getting spoken about, which I think is a lot rarer than when you're seeing it all the time on LinkedIn or on any blogs or anything like that. But as you briefly touched on your past experience, what sort of first turned your eye to Web3? What first made you interested in it and made you think, you know what, I need to pursue a career within this?
Yeah, when I first heard about it, it was early 2021, right? Like I'm not a technology early adopter. I was never into cryptocurrency. None of it ever made any sense to me, to be honest with you. I'm always a little bit later than the early adopters in wrapping my head around new things, always. And yeah, when I first kind of went down the rabbit hole, it sounded like the dumbest thing I'd ever heard of because it was basically people buying digital sports cards on the blockchain. And I just couldn't understand why these things were being bought and sold for so much money, why there was so much hype around it, until I was able to wrap my head around the core tenets of the promise of blockchain, the idea of provenance, the idea of authenticity, the idea of proof of ownership, the idea of being able to have an indisputable public ledger that records when things happen, how they happen, and so on and so forth. And that sort of clicked to me on the collectibles side, especially because as an adult, when I was a kid, I collected things and I accumulated things. But as an adult, you move around, you have family, you have kids. You don't want so much stuff. Actually, the stuff becomes very burdensome for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but like I hate stuff. I don't want any more stuff. I want to get rid of all the stuff I have, but I still want to be connected to things. I still want to have memories of things. I still want to be able to look back on experiences fondly. And that's really where it started to make sense to me. The blockchain as the infrastructure layer that facilitates people to keep things and retain things and be able to know the story behind things and validate that said things are real. It all clicked to me, and we're all living our lives digitally. I think this explosion around NFTs and digital collectibles especially happened during COVID. Everybody was locked down. People were kind of forcefully removed from the things that made their lives complete, and they needed to find other things, and they naturally gravitated towards kind of digital versions of many of the core facets of what made life good before we were told we couldn't leave our homes anymore, and maybe never again would be able to. So that's really when it all clicked for me. I still have a variety of feelings about the entirety of the space, kind of how it functions currently, the speculative nature of it, the prominence and prevalence of people losing a lot of money, being lured into the wrong opportunities. In any new space, there's opportunists, there's grifters, there's scam artists, there's people who are preying on the lack of understanding among others. And let's face it, the entire space, in terms of being part of the zeitgeist, it's really just a few years old. It's we're building the plane as we're flying it, so to speak. So it makes sense that people find themselves kind of prone to the wrong things that ultimately are not in their best interest, and that there are people out there, as always, who will capitalize on it. And you have like regulatory bodies like the SEC taking into question the legitimacy of the entirety of cryptocurrency and blockchain. So it's a very strange time, but I don't know, for me at least, I've always been drawn to the new thing. I've always been drawn to the uncertainty. I've always been drawn to chaos, where I have an opportunity, like anybody else, to try to make sense of the chaos, not just for myself, but for others. And that's really the role that I try to play in this space, and that's what I will continue to do moving forward.
No, thanks for that. And I would love to say that I agree with you about the collectibles and not wanting more stuff. But anyone who's been in my house and seen how much stuff I have and all the shoes that I
Yeah,
have will probably
yeah,
strongly disagree.
right,
But
right.
one thing that you did touch on as well, and I think it would be you'll have some good insight onto this, is um, obviously you can't talk about Web3 without mentioning cryptocurrency, and that's really how it grew, especially in terms of consumer awareness. And then alongside that, the phenomenon of influencers and this sort of
Yeah,
thing. And sure, there are Web3 influencers, but I think we've seen on the news there's influencers who aren't technology influencers, who are just famous
famous
Instagram
people.
people and this sort of stuff, who
Yeah,
are who are legitimizing it, who are recommending it, who are advertising it for money and this sort of stuff. And then
yeah,
some of those inevitably fail, fall apart,
yeah.
get pulled out and this sort of stuff. So then that doesn't help in terms of the actual, I guess, idea of it from a normal consumer standpoint, and they're thinking everything's a scam because of these. What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we've been in an influencer-driven culture since way before you were born, since way before I was born. Our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, they looked up to and admired the politicians of their time. You think about a guy like John F. Kennedy, or the entertainers of their time. You think about a guy like Frank Sinatra. This is not a new phenomenon. Influencers, powerful people, beautiful people, rich people have always had kind of undue influence on the perceptions and behaviors of the populace. So it's nothing new. I can vividly remember maybe a generation or so ago when many of the same types of celebrities and influencers who have now become under fire for some of their ill-advised advocacy around crypto and NFT projects, they were also under fire for sponsoring weight loss drugs, and things of that nature that A, either didn't work, B, were dangerous to those who used it, and ultimately, inevitably, C, they never used the thing in the first place, right? Like, celebrity culture is a real thing, especially here in America. We're always prone to aspire to those who have what we perceive that we don't have, but we want to have. So it's nothing new. I ran an influencer agency. It's called Brand Influencers. I started about, I don't know, I can't keep track of time, maybe 14 or 15 years ago. And I was competing. It was like me and Gary Vee, and like nobody else was really in the space at that time. And the reason I started the agency was I had been on the agency side prior, working with clients like Procter and Gamble, and I noticed we would do these experiential marketing programs, and we'd invite what we called at the time mommy bloggers to come blog live from these events that we were doing, sampling events where people could interact with Procter and Gamble products. And while they were within the confines of these experiences, they'd be blogging about it. People would be reading it. They'd be interacting on the very early versions of social media at the time, and then they'd be coming to the venue, lining up outside, not because they wanted to have this P&G experience or even get the free samples. They wanted to meet their favorite mommy bloggers who they had now just found out because of MySpace or Facebook at the time were in this venue, blogging live. And these were people that they aspired to. And these weren't the typical celebrity influencers. These were kind of homemade social media based influencers. You kind of fast forward to today, that's been the culture in consumer goods for a generation now. People who build themselves up based on building notoriety and building acclaim through what they say on social media are often in a power position in driving personal preference around a whole range of products and experiences. And certainly that's the case in the crypto and the Web3/NFT space. Is it good? I don't know. Is it bad? I don't know. It just is. And you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like, this is the culture. I think, the irony of it all is we're mostly lazy people, right? Like, we're very complacent people. We just want to be able to sit back, allow other people to tell us what matters and why it matters, and then just click a button and do it. That's kind of like the key behind most innovations that I think we've seen over the last 15, 20 years is like, the more convenient, the better for us. So yeah, of course, if a Web3 influencer, if a social media influencer, if a movie star comes out and advocates for something and we like them, we admire them, we respect them, it's easy for us to take their lead than have to do the hard work ourselves. So all of which is to say, I think if people are being misled intentionally or otherwise by the power of influence, it's our own fault for allowing it to happen.
I think I agree with you there, and I think as you say, it's someone feeling like they're close to that person, being like, oh, I've got this, and I know they've got it too, and this sort of stuff. It's nothing new. It starts when you're a kid, and I don't think however much you want to, you never really grow out of it. And I think that's really where it gets to. You just end up having more money and being able to spend it on more things to try and emulate those people that you admire.
100%. And it's fair. We want to feel like we're closer to those to whom we aspire. And if that makes us feel good and we're willing to take the risks involved, then so be it.
No, I completely agree, and clearly working for time, you've got your finger on the pulse, and we were speaking just before about AI and the convergence between Web3 and AI, and where do you think that leads us? I know everyone's talking about the possibilities, and ideally this is where we're going to be in 3-5 years. Realistically, how long do you think it's going to take for us to get to that point, and what do you think it looks like?
I mean, AI is the most compelling phenomenon in my life that I can remember. It's way bigger than social media. In a lot of ways, I think it's bigger than the internet, because I think it's so transformational in its ability to learn and to allow us to be our best selves. And what I mean by that is, I'm a storyteller. I like framing narrative around different topics, but I'm not a creative. I don't make stuff. I struggle to make decks, even though it's been a big part of my life for 20 years now. I can't make a website. I can't make advertisements or marketing assets. But like I've worked with teams and been able to advise them and strategize on what these things look like and how they should sound. I can't make videos yet. At one point earlier on in my career, I directed and produced a reality TV show. So like I personally, as a marketer, I am not creative enough to build stuff. With AI, with text to blank prompts, just over the last week, I can't tell you how much advertising copy I've written. I can't tell you how many decks I've produced. I can't tell you how many videos and memes I've created. Um, I'm creating things with my own hands for the first time in my career as a marketer, just using my ideas and strategies. To me, that's an immense unlock just on a personal level. When you think about doing business and how AI will transform it, when you think about connecting with the brands you love, chatbots for a while were a thing, but they didn't last because they were the dumbest things ever. You got the same response no matter what your prompt was to these chatbots. In the future, in the not too distant future, you will be able to have full-fledged, robust conversations on demand through AI with any organization, any celebrity, any IP holder, any nonprofit that you want. And it'll be real and it'll be informed conversation. When you think about media, I've gotten to a point in my life where I don't want to subscribe to any platforms anymore, because if there's a specific columnist on ESPN.com that I like, that doesn't mean I want to subscribe to ESPN and have to read and kind of comb through dozens of columnists that I don't want to consume. Rather, using Twitter, I want to be able to subscribe to 200 different thought leaders and content creators that I like, and I want to have an AI layer overlay to present all those disparate pieces of content from all these disparate sources in a very easy to digest manner. So I don't have to have 400 different newsletters coming into my email inbox every day. And on and on and on. I mean, these are obviously just very kind of simple implications around AI, but yeah, I think it's the most powerful piece of technology that we will have ever experienced. I'm sure you saw, the NVIDIA keynote where they kind of showed this game environment where you as a player of the game are able to interact with a character in the game who through AI can communicate directly with you and has all the context necessary to have a real conversation that's rooted in the universe of the game, but you can actually infiltrate it and influence. It's just mind blowing. And again, as I mentioned earlier, like I'm never the early adopter on tech. I'm the guy who comes later, a little bit later, and tries to wrap my head around it and then make it make sense for everybody else. And I think that's kind of the stage that I'm at and we're at with this incredible AI revolution.
No, and I think you say they're real simple examples and this sort of stuff, but I think the simplest ones are the ones that change everyone's perception of it the most, aren't they? It's very easy to, if you're
Yeah.
looking at something super complex, it's just going to go over people's heads, so they're going to be too complex for them to care. The simple
Yeah.
ones are the ones where you're like, I point, I click, and it does this, and
Yeah.
then everyone's like, wow, that's where I can see how I'm going to be able to do it, and all of this sort of stuff.
I,
So
I
I completely
turned
agree with you.
I turned Tupac into a basketball player last week. Um, because I was just like, I wonder what Tupac would look like as a basketball player, because basketball is my favorite sport and Tupac is my idol. So being able to just do that,
Yeah.
granted, like there's a never-ending array of incredible artists and creators who can build stuff, and I'm always in such awe. Well, now I can build stuff through generative AI, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things. I saw a post, without trying to go off topic. I saw a post of someone saying that the new AI generation is going to kill traditional art and this sort of stuff. And it was like, and it's not a real artist. And then it was like, but before that, people said that CGI artists weren't real artists and illustrators were. And before that, people said illustrators weren't real artists, but painters were. And it's just a consistent thing like that. Whereas all of those things still exist, and it's
Yeah.
just another evolution of it. But I know that we're running out of time, and to put you on the spot quickly. I know you mentioned columnists, you mentioned blogs and this sort of stuff. What would you say are some of the best columnists, blogs, places to get your information on AI, Web3, all of the new emerging tech?
Yeah. That's a tough question. I'll give you the easy answer for me. Whenever I want to better understand something that's happening in this space, I go first to Carly Riley, Overpriced JPEGs. I think she, among all the kind of talking heads and prognosticators out there, and there's some brilliant people out there, no doubt. What I love most about her and how she tells these stories and frames what matters most in culture today, and the conversation she has with people is, I feel like she's me having these like she's not up there in the clouds, like she doesn't
Sure.
use huge words that like I can't understand. She does a really great job of kind of simplifying the complex, as we talked about earlier, she tends to have some of the most important people kind of shaping the culture on her program. So that would be my recommendation to anybody listening. Like, if you really want to grasp what matters most, whether it's, you know, the SEC and trying to figure out if these things are securities or not, whether it's AI, whether it's, you know, JPEGs and NFTs, whether it's, you know, somebody like Luca Netz at Pudgy Penguins, you know, transforming a Web3 project into a global mainstream billion-dollar brand, and the steps that are necessary to kind of get to that realization. I love her podcast. I love her commentary. And obviously there's dozens, if not hundreds, more incredible people kind of speaking within and about the space. But she's my number one.
Brilliant. No, great. Well, thanks so much for that, and thanks for the time.
Yeah.
Look forward to posting this and seeing what everyone says and other influencers and people look at, and there's always going to be stuff for us to learn. But thank you so much for the time. It was great to speak. I'm sure we'll catch up soon. If you want to find out more about Jason, all of his contact detail will be below. But thanks so much. Look forward to catching up soon. Thanks so much. Bye.
Anytime, Ali. All right.